Multiple unknowns, high velocity, track and report.
Copy, they're maneuvering evasively, sir.
Lock trajectories, prepare intercept.
Night falls over the northern Pacific. High above the planet, a network of early warning satellites scans the Earth in silence. Their infrared sensors search constantly for one thing: the sudden flash of a missile launch. Inside a hardened command center beneath Colorado Springs, analysts monitor a wall of glowing digital maps. Radar feeds stream in from across the globe. Naval task forces move across the oceans like slow-moving chess pieces. Then, suddenly, a signal appears. Thousands of kilometers away, a missile has left the ground. Within seconds, trajectory models begin calculating its path. But something is different. This object is moving far faster than conventional ballistic missiles, and it is not following a predictable arc. Instead, it maneuvers, altering direction, diving through the upper atmosphere at speeds beyond Mach 5. A hypersonic weapon. Across the world, military planners in Washington, D.C., Beijing, and Moscow are confronting the same unsettling reality. A new class of weapons has entered the strategic battlefield. Systems like the KH-47M2 Kinshal, DF-17, and the American AGM-183 AW promise to reach targets thousands of kilometers away in minutes. Too fast for traditional defenses. Too unpredictable for existing missile shields. For decades, nuclear deterrence depended on time. Time to detect, to verify, to respond. Hypersonic weapons are erasing that time. In the shadows of this accelerating arms race, the world's major powers are entering a dangerous new phase of strategic competition. And if history has taught anything about arms races, it is that they rarely remain theoretical for long. The race for hypersonic dominance has already begun, and its consequences could shape the future of global security or ignite the next great conflict. In the decades after the Cold War, many believed the world had entered a new era of strategic stability. The massive nuclear standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union had ended. Arms control agreements limited entire categories of missiles. Military budgets shrank. The threat of a sudden global conflict appeared to fade into history. But beneath the surface, the foundations of that stability were beginning to erode. During the Cold War, deterrence relied on predictability. Intercontinental ballistic missiles followed known trajectories. Early warning systems could detect launches within seconds, allowing political leaders precious minutes to determine whether an attack was real. That fragile balance was governed by a doctrine known as mutually assured destruction. The logic was brutal but effective. If both sides possessed the ability to destroy each other completely, neither would risk launching the first strike. For decades, this grim equilibrium prevented nuclear war. Yet by the early 21st century, technological change began challenging that system. Missile defense systems were expanding. Precision weapons were improving. Space and cyber capabilities were transforming how militaries operated. And slowly, a new generation of weapons began to emerge, designed not just to travel fast, but to maneuver at extreme speeds. Hypersonic missiles. Unlike traditional ballistic missiles that arc high into space before descending toward their targets, hypersonic weapons can glide through the upper atmosphere while altering course. Their unpredictable flight paths make them far more difficult for radar systems to track. Their speed compresses decision time, and their maneuverability complicates interception. For military strategists, this combination introduces a dangerous uncertainty. The new arms race began accelerating in the early 2010s. In Russia, military planners sought technologies capable of bypassing Western missile defense systems. By 2018, Russian leadership publicly unveiled several advanced weapons programs, including the hypersonic glide vehicle known as the Avangard. Capable of reaching speeds reportedly exceeding Mach 20, Avangard was designed to carry nuclear warheads while maneuvering unpredictably during reentry. At the same time, Russia developed the air-launched Kh-47M2 Kinshal, which could be deployed from high-speed fighter aircraft and strike targets thousands of kilometers away. Russian officials argued that such weapons were necessary to maintain strategic parity with NATO. Across the Pacific, another power was making rapid progress. Over the past 2 decades, China has conducted one of the most ambitious military modernization programs in modern history. Its naval fleet has expanded dramatically. Its missile forces have grown in both number and capability. Among these developments was the introduction of the DF-17, believed to carry a hypersonic glide vehicle designed for precision strikes against high-value targets such as aircraft carriers and command centers. For Beijing, these systems serve a strategic purpose. They are intended to complicate military intervention by outside powers in regions that China considers vital to its national interests, particularly the waters surrounding Taiwan and the contested territories of the South China Sea. Meanwhile, the United States has been pursuing its own hypersonic programs. American defense planners became increasingly concerned that adversaries were gaining a technological advantage. Research accelerated across multiple branches of the U.S. military, leading to the development of experimental systems such as the AGM-183 LW and other glide vehicle platforms. Testing programs expanded through the late 2010s and early 2020s, reflecting growing urgency within the Pentagon. But the new arms race has not been driven by technology alone. Geopolitical tensions have also intensified. Relations between Russia and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization deteriorated sharply following the annexation of Crimea in 2014 and the escalation of the war in Ukraine in 2022. Meanwhile, strategic rivalry between the United States and China has expanded across multiple domains, from trade and technology to military power in the Indo-Pacific. At the same time, several arms control agreements that once limited missile deployments have collapsed. The Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, signed in 1987, banned land-based missiles with ranges between 500 and 5,500 kilometers. For more than 30 years, it eliminated an entire class of nuclear weapons from Europe. But in 2019, the treaty formally ended after accusations of violations by both sides. With its collapse, restrictions on intermediate-range missiles disappeared. New weapons could once again be deployed across Europe and Asia. For military planners, this shift reopened strategic possibilities that had been dormant for decades. Defense budgets began rising again across many regions. According to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, global military spending reached record levels in the early 2020s, surpassing $2 trillion annually. A growing share of that spending has been directed toward advanced technologies, artificial intelligence, autonomous drones, cyber warfare capabilities, and hypersonic weapons. The result is a rapidly evolving battlefield where speed, precision, and information dominance are becoming decisive factors. But hypersonic weapons represent something particularly disruptive, not simply because they are fast, but because they challenge the basic assumptions that have governed nuclear deterrence for generations. In the Cold War, even the fastest missiles provided roughly 30 minutes of warning before impact. Hypersonic systems could reduce that window dramatically. In some scenarios, leaders might have only minutes, or even seconds, to decide whether an incoming strike is conventional or nuclear. Such compressed timelines increase the risk of miscalculation. And in nuclear strategy, miscalculation can be catastrophic. For decades, the stability of global security has rested on the belief that no rational leader would risk triggering a nuclear exchange. But as new weapons shorten decision times and complicate detection, the margin for error becomes dangerously thin. Across military laboratories, testing ranges, and classified research facilities, engineers are working to perfect these systems. At the same time, generals and political leaders are quietly grappling with a troubling question. What happens when the world's fastest weapons meet the world's most fragile political tensions? Because the race for hypersonic dominance is no longer theoretical. It is unfolding in real time, and its impact is already beginning to reshape the strategic balance of power. For more than half a century, The architecture of global deterrence rested on a simple assumption. Missiles were fast, but they were predictable. Traditional intercontinental ballistic missiles launch high into space, following a ballistic arc before re-entering the atmosphere toward their targets. Their trajectories can be detected by radar and satellite systems almost immediately after launch. From that moment, early warning networks begin calculating impact points. During the Cold War, this system created a narrow but crucial window of time. Leaders in Washington, D.C. or Moscow could confirm whether an attack was real, determine its scale, and decide how to respond. Those minutes mattered. They reduced the chances of accidental war. Hypersonic weapons threatened to change that balance. The term hypersonic refers to speeds exceeding Mach 5, 5 times the speed of sound. But modern hypersonic systems often travel far faster than that. Some experimental glide vehicles are believed to reach speeds above Mach 10, while others may approach Mach 20 under certain conditions. At those velocities, a missile can cross continents in minutes. Yet speed alone does not define the revolution. The true challenge lies in maneuverability. Ballistic missiles follow predictable arcs governed largely by gravity. Hypersonic glide vehicles, by contrast, travel within the upper layers of the atmosphere. They can alter course during flight, diving, climbing, and changing direction in ways that complicate tracking. For radar operators, this creates a nightmare scenario. Instead of a fixed trajectory, the missile's path becomes uncertain. Predicting where it will strike becomes far more difficult. This unpredictability undermines many of the defensive systems designed during the late 20th century. The United States Missile Defense Agency and similar institutions around the world built intercept systems to counter ballistic threats. These systems rely on predicting the future location of incoming warheads. But when a weapon can maneuver at extreme speeds, those calculations become far less reliable. In practical terms, this means existing missile defense shields may struggle to intercept hypersonic attacks. For strategists, the implications extend beyond defense. Hypersonic weapons also blur the line between conventional and nuclear warfare. Many of these systems are designed to carry either type of payload. When early warning sensors detect a launch, they may not immediately know whether the missile carries a conventional warhead or nuclear one. That ambiguity creates dangerous uncertainty. If a country believes a nuclear strike may be underway, it could choose to retaliate before confirming the nature of the attack. This dynamic compresses decision-making time for political leaders. And in moments of crisis, time is the most valuable resource. Military planners often refer to this as the decision window, the period between detecting an incoming strike and determining how to respond. Hypersonic weapons could shrink that window dramatically. In certain scenarios, leaders might have only a few minutes to decide whether to launch a counterstrike. Under those conditions, the risk of misinterpretation rises sharply. A radar glitch, a false alarm, a misidentified missile test. Any of these events could trigger panic in a system already operating under extreme pressure. History offers several examples of how close the world has come to disaster because of such errors. In 1983, Soviet early warning systems mistakenly detected what appeared to be incoming American missiles. Only the judgment of a single officer prevented a potential nuclear escalation. During the Cold War, technological limitations sometimes provided a strange form of safety. Missiles moved more slowly. Detection systems had more time to verify signals. Hypersonic technology removes that margin. The strategic impact of this shift has not gone unnoticed by global powers. In Russia, leaders have repeatedly highlighted the deployment of advanced hypersonic systems as evidence that Moscow retains the ability to penetrate Western defenses. Russian officials have claimed operational use of the Kh-47M2 Kinjal during the war in Ukraine, targeting hardened infrastructure and strategic facilities. Meanwhile, China has invested heavily in hypersonic glide vehicles designed to challenge American naval dominance in the Pacific. Systems such as the DF-17 are believed to be capable of striking moving targets at sea, including aircraft carriers. For the United States, these developments have triggered an urgent effort to close the technological gap. Research programs across the U.S. military are developing hypersonic strike weapons intended for rapid global response missions. The goal is not only to match the capabilities of rival powers, but also to restore a credible deterrent in an era of accelerating technological competition. Yet the arms race is expanding beyond these three nations. Countries including India, Japan, France, and Australia have launched their own research initiatives into hypersonic technologies. Some aim to develop offensive missiles. Others focus on defenses capable of detecting and intercepting these high-speed threats. The result is a rapidly evolving technological contest. Universities, defense laboratories, and aerospace companies are now engaged in one of the most intense military innovation races since the early days of the space age. Wind tunnels test vehicles traveling at unimaginable speeds. New materials are engineered to survive temperatures hotter than molten lava. Advanced guidance systems attempt to control missiles moving faster than any aircraft ever built. This research is pushing the boundaries of modern engineering, but it is also introducing new strategic uncertainties. For decades, nuclear deterrence relied on a grim but stable understanding between rival powers. Each side knew the consequences of escalation. Each side understood the limits of its defenses. Hypersonic weapons threaten to disrupt that equilibrium. They promise unprecedented speed. They complicate detection. And they compress the time available for leaders to make the most important decisions of their lives. In a crisis between nuclear-armed states, those decisions could determine the fate of millions. For now, the hypersonic race remains largely confined to testing ranges and research facilities. But the technologies being perfected today are slowly entering operational service. Missiles are being deployed. Military doctrines are being rewritten. And strategic planners are preparing for a future battlefield where distance offers little protection. Because in the era of hypersonic warfare, geography may no longer guarantee safety. A missile launched thousands of kilometers away could arrive before diplomatic channels even have time to react. And if tensions between the world's major powers continue to rise, these weapons could soon move from theoretical deterrence to instruments of real conflict. The question now facing global leaders is no longer whether hypersonic weapons will reshape warfare. That transformation has already begun. The more urgent question is where the first true test of this new technology might occur. Because around the world, several regions are already standing on the edge of confrontation. Across the modern geopolitical landscape, several regions stand out as potential points where major powers could collide. These flashpoints are not theoretical. They are places where rival militaries already operate in close proximity, where alliances intersect with national ambitions, and where new technologies like hypersonic weapons could dramatically alter the balance of power. Each carries its own history, its own strategic stakes, and its own risks of escalation. Few places on Earth hold as much strategic significance as the waters separating mainland China from the island of Taiwan. For decades, the Taiwan Strait has remained one of the most sensitive geopolitical fault lines in the world. Beijing views Taiwan as part of its sovereign territory, a position rooted in the unresolved legacy of the Chinese Civil War. Taiwan, meanwhile, operates as a self-governing democracy with its own government, military, and economy. The United States maintains a policy of strategic ambiguity toward Taiwan's defense, while continuing to supply the island with military equipment. In recent years, tensions in the region have intensified. Chinese naval patrols and military exercises around Taiwan have grown more frequent. Warplanes from the People's Liberation Army Air Force regularly enter Taiwan's air defense identification zone. At the same time, American naval forces continue conducting freedom of navigation operations through the strait. Carrier strike groups from the United States Navy routinely operate in nearby waters. In this increasingly crowded military environment, hypersonic weapons could become a decisive factor. China's development of systems such as the DF-17 is widely believed to be part of a broader strategy designed to deter outside intervention. Aircraft carriers, long considered the backbone of American power projection, could become vulnerable to extremely fast, maneuverable anti-ship missiles. A successful hypersonic strike could disable critical naval assets before defensive systems have time to respond. For military planners in the Pacific, the presence of such weapons is forcing a re-evaluation of long-standing operational assumptions. In any crisis involving Taiwan, the speed of modern weapons could compress the timeline for escalation. A confrontation that once might have unfolded over days or weeks could now evolve within hours. Another region where tensions remain dangerously high lies across the plains of Eastern Europe. Since the outbreak of the full-scale war in Ukraine in 2022, relations between Russia and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization have reached their lowest point since the Cold War. Although NATO forces are not directly involved in the fighting, the alliance has expanded military deployments across its eastern flank. Battle groups now operate in countries such as Poland, Lithuania, and Romania. Russia, meanwhile, has reinforced its own military presence near NATO borders and in the enclave of Kaliningrad. Kaliningrad has long been one of Moscow's most heavily militarized regions, hosting advanced air defense systems and missile units capable of reaching deep into Europe. In recent years, analysts have speculated that hypersonic weapons such as the Kh-47M2 Kinshal could be deployed in or near this region. If used in a conflict, such systems could strike critical infrastructure, command centers, or airbases within minutes. For NATO planners, this possibility creates new strategic challenges. Traditional defensive planning assumed that incoming threats could be tracked and intercepted with sufficient warning. Hypersonic weapons may shorten that window dramatically. This is particularly concerning in Europe, where distances between potential launch sites and key targets are relatively short. A missile launched from Western Russia could reach many European capitals in minutes. Such compressed timelines increase the risk that a localized confrontation, perhaps involving a border incident or accidental clash, could escalate rapidly. And in a region where nuclear-armed states operate in close proximity, the stakes remain extraordinarily high. Further south lies another contested region where global powers frequently operate side by side. The South China Sea is one of the most strategically important waterways in the world. Each year, trillions of dollars in global trade pass through these waters. But the region is also the subject of overlapping territorial claims involving China, Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, and Brunei. Over the past decade, China has constructed a network of artificial islands across disputed reefs and shoals. Many of these outposts now host airstrips, radar installations, and missile batteries. The growing military presence has raised concerns among neighboring states and their partners. Naval patrols by the United States Navy and allied forces regularly pass through the area, challenging what they view as excessive territorial claims. These encounters are usually controlled and professional, but the increasing density of military activity raises the possibility of miscalculation. A collision between ships, an aircraft incident, a warning shot misinterpreted. In such a tense environment, the presence of advanced weapons adds another layer of complexity. Hypersonic anti-ship missiles could allow coastal defenses to strike targets across vast areas of ocean. For naval commanders, this changes the strategic map. Distances that once offered safety may no longer provide protection. Aircraft carriers, destroyers, and amphibious assault ships could all face threats from weapons capable of arriving faster than many defense systems can respond. The South China Sea has long been a region of quiet strategic competition, but with the introduction of hypersonic technology, the balance of power in these waters is becoming more uncertain. And uncertainty is often the most dangerous element in any military confrontation. Several of the world's most volatile regions are already intersecting with a hypersonic arms race. But these are not the only places where tensions could erupt. Elsewhere, long-standing rivalries and emerging technologies are creating additional pressure points across the global system. The spread of hypersonic technology is not limited to the world's largest powers. As geopolitical rivalries deepen across multiple regions, new actors are entering the competition, and existing conflicts are becoming more technologically complex. In several volatile areas, advanced missile systems, cyber capabilities, and autonomous weapons are converging in ways that could accelerate escalation. In the volatile landscape of the Middle East, one of the most dangerous rivalries continues to unfold between Israel and Iran. For decades, tensions between the two countries have shaped the strategic environment of the region. Iran has steadily expanded its missile program, developing an arsenal that includes medium-range ballistic missiles capable of reaching targets across the Middle East. At the same time, Israel has invested heavily in missile defense systems designed to intercept incoming threats. Systems such as Iron Dome, David's Sling, and the Arrow missile defense system form one of the most advanced layered defense networks in the world. Yet even these sophisticated systems could face new challenges as missile technology evolves. Iran has increasingly emphasized the development of maneuverable reentry vehicles and faster missile platforms. While true hypersonic capability remains a subject of debate among analysts, Tehran has publicly announced research into next-generation high-speed weapons. The strategic concern is not only about individual missile systems. It is about escalation. An exchange of missile strikes between Israel and Iran could quickly draw in other actors, regional militias, neighboring states, and potentially major global powers with interests in the region. The Middle East has often served as a testing ground for emerging military technologies. And in an era of rapidly advancing missile systems, even a regional conflict could have global consequences. Not every conflict begins with missiles. Some of the most disruptive attacks in modern history have occurred in cyberspace. Power grids, financial networks, transportation systems, and communications infrastructure are now deeply interconnected and increasingly vulnerable to digital intrusion. Over the past decade, cyber operations linked to state actors have targeted institutions across the globe. Government agencies, energy companies, and technology firms have all experienced sophisticated breaches attributed to hackers associated with major powers such as Russia, China, and the United States. Unlike conventional military actions, cyber attacks can unfold quietly and anonymously. The origin of an intrusion is often difficult to confirm, creating uncertainty about responsibility. That ambiguity complicates the rules of deterrence. If a nation's electrical grid suddenly fails or its banking system collapses under a coordinated cyber assault, determining whether the event is criminal, accidental, or an act of war may take time. Yet the pressure to respond could be immediate. In a future crisis between rival powers, cyber attacks might precede or accompany conventional military strikes. They could disable early warning systems, interfere with command networks, or create confusion among civilian populations. When combined with extremely fast weapons such as hypersonic missiles, cyber disruptions could make it even harder for leaders to understand what is happening in real time. And when information becomes unreliable, the risk of miscalculation grows. Above the Earth's atmosphere lies another increasingly contested domain. Space has become essential to modern military operations. Satellites provide navigation signals, communications links, weather monitoring, and missile launch detection. Without them, many advanced weapons systems would struggle to function effectively. But the space environment is no longer purely civilian. Both China and Russia have tested anti-satellite technologies capable of destroying or disabling spacecraft in orbit. The United States has also developed capabilities designed to protect or replace critical satellites during conflict. Military planners increasingly view space as a potential battlefield. In a future confrontation between major powers, satellites could become early targets in an effort to blind an adversary's sensors and communications networks. Such attacks could disrupt global navigation systems, including the Global Positioning System, which supports everything from civilian aviation to precision-guided weapons. At the same time, advances in artificial intelligence are transforming the development of autonomous military systems. Drones capable of independent navigation, automated target recognition, and coordinated swarm tactics are already under development in several countries. These technologies promise faster decision-making and greater operational reach. But they also raise serious strategic questions. When machines begin assisting or even making combat decisions, the pace of warfare could accelerate dramatically. Human oversight might struggle to keep up with events unfolding at machine speed. In a crisis involving hypersonic missiles, cyber operations, and autonomous systems, escalation could unfold faster than traditional diplomatic channels can react. Behind every geopolitical crisis lies a deeper reality. Power, not simply political influence, but the concrete capabilities of modern militaries, fleets, aircraft, missiles, satellites, and the technologies that connect them. Understanding the balance of power between the world's major military forces is essential to understanding the risks of future conflict. Because the hypersonic arms race is only one part of a much larger transformation in global military capability. The United States, global reach and technological power. For more than 70 years, the United States has maintained the most globally deployed military force on Earth. Its power rests on a vast network of alliances, overseas bases, and advanced technologies designed to project force across every major ocean. At the center of this system is the United States Department of Defense, which oversees the world's largest military budget. American naval power remains particularly significant. The United States Navy operates the largest fleet of aircraft carriers in the world. These vessels serve as mobile air bases capable of launching fighter jets thousands of kilometers from home territory. Carrier strike groups patrol regions such as the Pacific Ocean, the Indian Ocean, and the Mediterranean Sea, allowing the United States to respond quickly to emerging crises. In the air, the United States Air Force operates a fleet of advanced stealth aircraft including the F-22 Raptor and the F-35 Lightning II. These aircraft are designed to evade radar detection while striking targets with high precision. The United States also maintains one of the most advanced nuclear deterrence systems in the world. This nuclear triad includes land-based intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and strategic bombers. Submarines such as the Ohio-class submarine patrol quietly beneath the oceans, carrying missiles capable of striking targets across continents. This survivable second strike capability has long been a cornerstone of American nuclear deterrence. Yet even with these powerful forces, U.S. military planners have grown increasingly concerned about emerging threats. Hypersonic weapons developed by rival powers could potentially challenge traditional advantages in speed and reach. To address this concern, the Pentagon has accelerated research programs designed to deploy its own hypersonic systems. Among them is the AGM-183 ARW, intended to provide rapid long-range strike capability. Other projects aim to develop land-based and sea-based hypersonic platforms capable of striking targets anywhere in the world within minutes. These efforts reflect a growing recognition within American defense circles that the next generation of warfare will be defined not only by firepower, but by speed. China, rapid expansion and regional power projection. Over the past 2 decades, China has undertaken one of the fastest military modernization efforts in modern history. The People's Liberation Army has expanded its capabilities across land, sea, air, cyber, and space domains. Much of this transformation has focused on strengthening China's ability to operate in the Western Pacific, a region Beijing considers critical to its security and economic interests. China's naval forces, led by the People's Liberation Army Navy, have grown dramatically in size. By the early 2020s, China possessed the largest navy in the world by number of vessels. New destroyers, frigates, amphibious assault ships, and aircraft carriers have entered service at an impressive pace. This expansion reflects a strategic objective often described as anti-access and area denial. The goal is to make it extremely difficult for rival militaries to operate freely near China's coastline. Missile forces play a central role in this strategy. The People's Liberation Army Rocket Force controls a wide range of ballistic and cruise missiles designed to target military bases, naval forces, and critical infrastructure. Among these weapons is the DF-17, which carries a hypersonic glide vehicle capable of maneuvering toward its target at extremely high speeds. Analysts believe such systems could threaten high-value assets such as aircraft carriers operating in the Western Pacific. China has also invested heavily in next-generation aircraft, including stealth fighters like the Chengdu J-20. At sea, new aircraft carriers such as the Fujian represent a significant step toward blue water naval operations. Beyond traditional military platforms, China has developed advanced capabilities in cyber warfare and anti-satellite technologies. These systems could play critical roles in any future conflict involving technologically advanced opponents. The rapid pace of Chinese military development has prompted close attention from defense planners around the world. In particular, the combination of expanding naval power and advanced missile systems has raised concerns about the strategic balance in the Indo-Pacific. For the United States and its allies, maintaining stability in this region has become an increasingly complex challenge. And as both sides continue to modernize their forces, the race for technological superiority is accelerating. The growing military capabilities of both the United States and China illustrate the scale of the global arms competition now underway. But these two powers are not alone in shaping the strategic balance. Another major military actor continues to play a decisive role in global security. A nation with one of the world's largest nuclear arsenals and a long tradition of military innovation. A country whose recent conflicts have already reshaped the geopolitical landscape. That country is Russia. Across land, sea, cyberspace, and orbit, the nature of conflict is evolving. Technologies once confined to research laboratories are entering real-world military planning. And as these systems spread across multiple regions and actors, the complexity of global security increases. Each flashpoint has its own political context. Each involves different players and strategic calculations. But together, they form a network of tensions that stretches across the planet. If even one of these regions were to spiral into open confrontation between major powers, the consequences could extend far beyond local borders. Because in the modern world, regional crises rarely remain isolated. They connect through alliances, supply chains, and strategic rivalries. And in an age defined by rapidly advancing weapons technology, the speed of escalation could be faster than ever before. While the military rivalry between the United States and China often dominates headlines, another power continues to shape the global strategic balance. A country with vast territory, immense natural resources, and one of the largest nuclear arsenals ever built. That country is Russia. For decades, Russia has maintained a military doctrine centered on strategic deterrence, the ability to threaten overwhelming retaliation in response to any attack. Even after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Moscow preserved much of the nuclear infrastructure that once formed the backbone of Soviet power. Today, Russia remains one of only two nations possessing a nuclear arsenal large enough to threaten global devastation. That Russia's strategic forces are designed around a system known as the nuclear triad. This structure includes land-based intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and long-range strategic bombers. Each component provides redundancy, ensuring that even if one part of the arsenal were destroyed, others could still deliver a retaliatory strike. Land-based missiles are operated by the Strategic Rocket Forces, which controls dozens of missile silos and mobile launch platforms scattered across Russian territory. At sea, nuclear-powered submarines such as the Bora-class submarine patrol beneath Arctic and Pacific waters. These vessels carry submarine-launched ballistic missiles capable of striking targets thousands of kilometers away. In the air, strategic bombers including the Tu-160 provide an additional layer of nuclear deterrence. Together, these systems ensure that Russia retains the ability to launch a second strike even after absorbing a devastating attack. Yet beyond nuclear forces, Moscow has invested heavily in new technologies designed to counter Western military advantages. One of the most prominent examples is the development of hypersonic weapons. Among these systems is the Avangard, which is mounted on intercontinental ballistic missiles and capable of maneuvering through the atmosphere at extreme speeds during its final phase of flight. Russian officials claim the Avangard system can travel at speeds exceeding Mach 20, making interception extremely difficult with existing missile defense systems. Another notable platform is the Kh-47M2 Kinzhal, an air-launched weapon carried by high-speed fighter aircraft. Kinzhal missiles have reportedly been used during the war in Ukraine, demonstrating Russia's willingness to employ advanced technologies in active conflict. For Moscow, these weapons serve both military and political purposes. They signal technological capability while reinforcing Russia's strategic deterrence against NATO. Opposing Russia across much of Europe is the world's most powerful military alliance. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization was founded in 1949 as a collective defense pact linking North American and European nations. Its central principle is simple. An attack on one member is considered an attack on all. Today, NATO includes more than 30 countries across Europe and North America. Together, these states command enormous combined military resources. The alliance includes some of the world's most technologically advanced armed forces, including those of the United States, United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, and Canada. Following the outbreak of war in Ukraine in 2022, NATO significantly increased its military presence along its eastern frontier. Multinational battle groups were deployed across countries such as Poland, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. These deployments aim to deter potential aggression while reassuring member states located near Russia's borders. At sea, NATO navies operate across the Baltic Sea, the Black Sea, and the Mediterranean Sea. In the air, NATO aircraft conduct regular patrols to monitor airspace and respond to potential incursions. Like the United States, several NATO members are now investing in research programs aimed at countering hypersonic threats. Some projects focus on improved early warning sensors. Others explore new interceptor technologies designed to engage extremely fast targets. The alliance's strength lies not only in individual national capabilities, but in coordination between them. Shared intelligence networks, joint exercises, and integrated command structures allow NATO forces to operate as a unified coalition. At the highest level of strategic competition, nuclear weapons remain the ultimate instruments of deterrence. The world's largest arsenals are held by the United States and Russia, each possessing thousands of nuclear warheads. Other nuclear-armed states include China, France, United Kingdom, India, Pakistan, and North Korea. Each maintains its own doctrine governing when and how nuclear weapons might be used. Despite the terrifying destructive potential of these arsenals, nuclear deterrence has historically prevented direct war between major powers. The logic remains grim but consistent. Any nuclear attack would trigger retaliation capable of destroying entire societies. Yet the emergence of hypersonic weapons introduces new complications to this balance. If missiles can reach targets faster than early warning systems can respond, leaders may feel pressure to act quickly during crises. The time available for verification, communication, and diplomacy could shrink dramatically. And in nuclear strategy, time is often the thin line separating caution from catastrophe. Across continents and oceans, military capabilities continue to evolve. Advanced aircraft, submarines, satellites, and missile systems are reshaping how wars might be fought in the future. But the growing speed and sophistication of these technologies also create new risks. Because in a world where weapons can strike within minutes, political leaders may face decisions that once allowed far more time for reflection. The global balance of power remains complex. Yet beneath that complexity lies a simple reality. The faster the weapons become, the smaller the margin for error. If the competition over hypersonic weapons and advanced military technologies were ever to escalate into open conflict between major powers, the consequences would extend far beyond the battlefield. Modern warfare is no longer confined to front lines or isolated regions. Global economies, energy systems, digital networks, and transportation routes are deeply interconnected. A crisis involving major military powers could disrupt these systems in ways that would be felt across the entire planet. Understanding these potential consequences helps explain why strategic stability remains such a critical priority for world leaders. Since the middle of the 20th century, nuclear weapons have created a paradox in international security. Their destructive power is so overwhelming that they have discouraged direct war between the largest military powers. This concept is often described as mutually assured destruction. The idea is stark. If two nuclear-armed states possess the ability to destroy each other completely, neither side can hope to win a nuclear war. As a result, both are deterred from launching the first strike. For decades, this grim balance helped prevent direct confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Today, the world's largest nuclear arsenals remain in the hands of the United States and Russia. But the global nuclear landscape has become more complex. Additional nuclear-armed states such as China, India, Pakistan, North Korea, France, and United Kingdom now possess nuclear weapons. Each operates under its own strategic doctrine and regional security concerns. Hypersonic weapons could complicate this delicate balance. Their extreme speed reduces the time available for leaders to confirm whether an incoming missile carries a conventional or nuclear warhead. In a moment of crisis, uncertainty could lead to rapid escalation. Even a limited conflict involving nuclear powers could produce devastating consequences. Strategic analysts often warn that once nuclear weapons are used, controlling escalation becomes extraordinarily difficult. A single strike could trigger retaliation. Retaliation could lead to further escalation. Within hours, a regional conflict might spiral into a global catastrophe. For this reason, nuclear deterrence remains one of the most carefully managed aspects of international security. But deterrence relies on communication, trust in early warning systems, and time for decision-making. Hypersonic technology threatens to compress that timeline dramatically. Even without nuclear escalation, a major conflict between powerful nations would have profound economic consequences. The modern global economy depends on complex supply chains that stretch across continents. Manufacturing components may be produced in one country, assembled in another, and shipped worldwide through interconnected trade networks. Many of these routes pass through strategic maritime corridors such as the South China Sea, the Strait of Hormuz, and the Suez Canal. If conflict disrupted any of these routes, global trade could slow dramatically. Shipping insurance costs would rise. Ports might close. Energy shipments could be interrupted. The consequences would ripple through international markets. Financial centers in cities such as New York City, London, and Tokyo would likely experience immediate volatility. Stock markets could fall sharply as investors react to uncertainty. Energy prices might surge if oil and gas exports were threatened. Critical industries, from semiconductor manufacturing to food production, could experience shortages if transportation networks break down. Recent global crises have already demonstrated how fragile supply chains can be. Even localized disruptions have caused delays and shortages affecting millions of people. A major war between advanced industrial economies could produce disruptions on an entirely different scale. Entire sectors of the global economy could slow or halt. Countries dependent on imports of energy, food, or manufactured goods would face difficult challenges maintaining stability. Economic hardship, in turn, can create political pressure within nations. Governments confronted with rising prices, shortages, and public anxiety may face growing internal instability. In such circumstances, the political environment surrounding an international conflict becomes even more complicated. Economic warfare, including sanctions, trade restrictions, and financial isolation, has already become a central tool in geopolitical competition. A large-scale conflict would likely intensify these measures dramatically. Global markets, already interconnected, could fracture into competing blocs aligned with rival powers. Trade routes that once connected the world might become battlegrounds of strategic competition. The risks of escalation extend far beyond missiles and military forces. Modern societies rely on vast networks of infrastructure that support daily life: electricity grids, communication satellites, digital banking systems, transportation networks, and energy pipelines. In a large-scale conflict, these systems could become targets as well. And if they were disrupted, the consequences could reach into homes and cities across the world. Beyond nuclear deterrence and economic disruption, a major war involving advanced military powers would likely create cascading crises across multiple domains: social, technological, and environmental. The speed and reach of modern weapons amplify these effects, leaving little time for governments or populations to respond effectively. The modern world is built on interconnected digital systems. Power grids, water treatment facilities, communication networks, and financial platforms are all linked by digital networks. A targeted cyber attack could paralyze critical infrastructure before conventional military forces even engage. Analysts warn that a well-coordinated cyber campaign could cause large-scale power outages in cities such as Berlin, New York City, and Shanghai. Disruptions to transportation systems, halting rail, air, and maritime logistics. Banking system failures, preventing access to cash or credit and destabilizing markets. Communication blackouts that isolate military units and civilian populations, complicating coordination. In combination with rapid conventional or hypersonic strikes, these digital disruptions could create widespread confusion, slow response times, and heighten the risk of miscalculation. Even small errors in such a high-pressure environment could escalate a local incident into a full-scale confrontation. Modern conflicts rarely remain confined to military zones. Civilian populations are often caught in the crossfire. Large-scale hostilities in regions such as Eastern Europe, the Middle East, or the Taiwan Strait could produce millions of refugees. Urban areas near conflict zones might experience mass displacement due to attacks on infrastructure and housing, scarcity of food, water, and medical supplies, overloaded emergency services and humanitarian agencies. Neighboring countries would face enormous pressures to absorb displaced populations, potentially straining political stability and social cohesion. The result could be a ripple effect, where regional instability spreads far beyond the initial conflict. Energy supplies are central to modern economies and national security. Major conflicts can disrupt oil and gas production, transmission, and distribution. Regions like the Persian Gulf, which produce a significant share of global oil exports, are particularly vulnerable. A targeted strike on pipelines, refineries, or shipping lanes could trigger global oil price spikes, destabilizing economies dependent on imports. Disruptions to electricity generation in countries relying on natural gas. Intensified competition for scarce resources, leading to further geopolitical friction. Even nations not directly involved in hostilities could experience energy shortages, affecting transportation, industry, and domestic consumption. Modern warfare carries environmental consequences. Explosions, fires, and damage to industrial facilities release toxins and pollutants into air, soil, and water systems. Hypersonic strikes, precision bombing, and cyber-driven industrial disruptions could exacerbate these hazards. Urban areas are particularly at risk. Damaged infrastructure can contaminate water supplies, destroy hospitals, and cripple sanitation systems, creating long-term public health crises. Beyond immediate destruction, environmental fallout can last for years, complicating reconstruction and recovery. Perhaps the most insidious effect of modern weapons is the compression of time. Hypersonic missiles, Autonomous drones, cyber attacks, and space-based surveillance systems can operate at speeds far beyond human reaction times. In a real-world crisis, decisions that once took days may need to be made within minutes or even seconds. This accelerated timeline increases the probability of errors. Misinterpretation, miscalculation, or technical malfunction could trigger escalation that might have been preventable in slower, more deliberate conflicts. The consequences are clear. In today's interconnected, high-speed environment, the cost of misjudgment is potentially global. If the world is to avoid the worst-case scenarios, nuclear war, economic collapse, mass displacement, and environmental devastation, leaders must recognize the urgent need for strategic restraint, robust communication channels, and global coordination. Yet history teaches us that even with these measures, tension often persists at the edge of crisis. The next section will reflect on how humanity can maintain balance and avoid catastrophe in an era defined by speed, power, and uncertainty. The world stands at a precarious crossroads. Across oceans, deserts, and mountains, weapons of unprecedented speed and power now exist alongside a global population more interconnected than ever. Hypersonic missiles can arrive in minutes. Cyber attacks can collapse grids instantaneously. Autonomous systems can make decisions faster than human operators can react. And yet, despite these terrifying capabilities, humanity has avoided total destruction so far. History offers both warning and guidance. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 revealed how close the world came to nuclear annihilation. A single decision by a military officer or political leader prevented catastrophe. The Cold War, with all its tension and brinkmanship, demonstrates that even rival powers can coexist under a fragile balance of deterrence. Today, that balance is shifting. The introduction of hypersonic weapons, advanced AI-driven systems, and globalized cyber networks compresses decision-making windows and amplifies uncertainty. The risk is no longer just localized conflict. A miscalculation in the Taiwan Strait, the Baltic region, the Middle East, or even in cyberspace could cascade into a global crisis. Yet within this danger lies an opportunity. Diplomacy, strategic communication, and international frameworks have the potential to stabilize these new threats. Arms control treaties, early warning agreements, and multilateral dialogue can help preserve the narrow margins that prevent escalation. Humanity's ability to adapt has always been tested by technology. From the first atomic bombs to intercontinental missiles, societies have found ways to impose restraint, to prevent instantaneous power from translating into annihilation. The challenge now is magnified. The speed of modern weapons leaves little room for error, and the stakes have never been higher. But the principles remain unchanged. Awareness, caution, and collaboration are essential. Global leaders must understand that military superiority, while powerful, cannot replace careful judgment and measured decision-making. Because in a world of unprecedented speed and lethality, restraint becomes the ultimate weapon. The fragile balance of peace, once taken for granted, must now be actively preserved. It is a balance between technological advancement and human judgment, between capability and conscience. And in that balance lies the hope that humanity can navigate the hazards of the 21st century without succumbing to the horrors of total war. For while the tools of destruction have grown faster and more precise, the responsibility of those who command them remains profoundly human. The decisions made in the next hours, days, and years will determine not just the fate of nations, but the survival of civilization itself.